Hey, and welcome to this new track in an hour video. In this video I'm going to try to make a track in 1 hour using the Infinity bundle, but I will be using a bunch of gear in the studio. I wanted to make this a no holds barred one, so as you see right now I'm recording some basses with the Oberheim Matrix, which sounds amazing. Let's have a listen. And this is preset 005. It has really nice, wobbly, warm bass. So I'm very happy with how that's sounding. I'm going to track it in to the bass track. I had my metronome for a sec, just so I know that I'm recording on the one. Yeah, and what you're seeing in front of you here is the Infinity bundle. The little controller sequencer I'm using is the Beatstep Pro from Arturia. This is one of my favorite sequencers. I usually, as you can see, just knock patterns into it very randomly, and because it's super tightly synchronized with their ERM Multiclock, yeah, I'm able to get stuff out of it that I really like. So yeah, it's super easy to check if your sequence is right, because this is one of the few sequencers that splits notes that you tap in and has a separate row at the top for those 16 steps, which is just really brilliant. It just makes it so much easier than if you're trying to figure all that out on one row of pads and LEDs. What I'm doing is just recording different pattern options here and tracking them into Ableton if I like them. So whenever I find a sequence that I like, I just grab it as audio with the goal of finding one that I think is the best. And then that one, often I'll then go and track into a longer take. And this is actually just a straight preset from the Matrix. I don't think I did anything to it. And I just love that you can be so random with this thing and it still sounds groovy. I think having the multi-clock attached to it is a big part of it sounding really tight. I've heard that this thing synchronized to its USB cable or MIDI just straight from Ableton isn't super tight, the sequencer. I mean, I don't know if that's true. I've always just used it with the multi-clock. But in any case, if you've never tried a Beatstep Pro, I can really recommend it. It's a really nice way to make drums and bass lines. Above it, you'll see my sort of outboard rack. Here we go, a little bit of tweakage. Yeah, the controller I'm using is something made by, I think it's called Ping. Let me have a look. It's the synth programmer from Stereoping. I don't think it's made anymore, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a really nice way to be able to control that synth. And here you can see another synth that we're going to be using today, which is the Moog Muse, which I've recently got and is amazing. It's such a nice synth. So I'm tracking in this bass line right now as MIDI, just to have the option to go back to it if I need to. And as I was saying, in the rack above the Beatstep Pro, you'll see the outboard gear that I mostly use to process my mix bus, which is the LouderThanLiftoff and the Neve multibus, multiband, what's it called here? The master bus processor. The API 2500 is right now inserted on the kick, just giving that a little bit of edge. And actually in this case I was using the Silver Bullet Mark II to track everything through, so everything's going through that for a bit of warmth and mojo. And I'll show you some other processors that I use to sculpt the sounds, to remove some of the bass of certain stuff on the way into the DAW. As you can see now, I have my MIDI in the DAW, and because I've inserted all this stuff on the outputs, like the timing is all over the place. Like nothing is on the grid because there's massive latency being introduced by going to those outboard devices as plugins. I had to run the buffers quite high because my computer was struggling with all the video captures. So in this case, I'm actually considering Ableton like a tape machine. So I'm not trying to play any notes on the grid. I'm keeping them as a recording and moving them as a whole. Whatever, I guess, gets you to the point where you find the right groove, right? So all the other clips that are playing through Ableton, of course, you know, they can be on the grid, but anything that's coming in live is going to be in a weird place MIDI-wise. So the drums you're hearing is what I use in my live set. Those drums are actually triggered from Microtonic, which is an amazing VST for drums. If you haven't tried it, I can absolutely recommend it. And there you see the multi-clock. So I'm tweaking this now to get a better timing on the bass, which is why I switched on the hi-hats and drums. That's better. Checking the swing a bit, just being a weirdo, but I usually don't use swing on basses. Not that housey. Well, looks like I put a little bit on it. That's okay. As you can see, I have that parameter mapped on the APC to control the decay of all the hi-hats, which is a super nice little trick. It's part of our Infinity bundle, and the Rapid Flow template also come with it. It's a really nice way to be able to just check the groove and energy of your things. So I am spending quite a bit of time, as you can tell, on this bass line. I'm now recording this part in because I found that, you know, if your groove foundation obviously is feeling really good, it makes everything else afterwards much easier. So yeah, I'm tracking this in as MIDI, but I'll track this in as audio also. I usually just have the MIDI as a backup in case I do something horribly wrong with the audio, but I very rarely go back to the MIDI and use it for anything. I prefer to just get everything into the DAW as audio as quickly as possible and not have to tweak things endlessly. So I think I'm happy with the way this is grooving. I know I have the MIDI captured, so now is actually time to do a take of this bass pattern, and I'm sure I'll do some filter rides on it so that I have options later on in the track to like maybe do a bigger bass line in the break or just bring the energy up and down. So let's have a listen to how this Oberheim sounds, because yeah, it's a really wonderful synth. So as you may hear, the release on it is quite long. I'm sure there are notes that are overlapping. I'm sure it's overlapping with the kick drum also, which can be a bit tricky later on in the mix. But I recently did a video kind of highlighting things in psytrance music that I'm really not so chuffed about. And I realized that I really like long groove basses like this with a long release, and sometimes they do play on a kick, and you know, the trick is to mix them still cleanly, and it's absolutely doable as I showed in that psytrance video. So I've challenged myself to move away from some of my like stigmas of, you know, never having a bass note playing on the kick, which honestly I'm also guilty of. So in this track I wanted to try a few different ways of making this bass line. That sounds nice, it's a bit more compact. You'll notice there's a little slap delay on the bass channel. Yeah, yeah, I really like having a little bit of delay on the bass channel. And there you go, you can see there's my recording. I have 3 other takes above it on that green bass channel. That, yeah, the other ones that I did before this MIDI variation, just adjusting the volume of that bass so that it doesn't overpower the whole track. And now just going through the other takes. So I realized, yeah, all those other takes aren't as good as the last one I did, so that's the one that I'm keeping. You can tell also that I fixed the groove with the multiclock on that bass line. It's way more in the pocket. It looks like my webcam frame rate is like 2. It's pretty choppy, like I said. My computer was struggling a bit during this session. But yeah, most important thing is the audio. So I remember what I was doing here is I'm listening to see which is the part that I'm going to loop into a short loop so that I have a solid bass line that I can just use throughout the track in all the basic parts. Yeah, not have it varying all the time. And use the longer take maybe for a break or for a build-up or something. So yeah, that's the bit I was looking for. Like, that felt right on many levels. So I've copied the original bass part and done the full loop above it so I can go back to it, and this is now my basic bass line loop. As you can tell, it's a little bit shorter than the other version with the release. It's a little bit funkier. It'll leave me a little bit more space for mixing. Switching off the MIDI now, going to the Matrix and moving on to what looks like will be the Prophet 6. Yeah, just moving the camera around here so that you can be part of what's happening there. And yeah, I'm going to be triggering this with the Torso T1, which is a little sequencer I picked up on lately, which is super cool. It's for like doing harmonic melodic stuff. It's been a huge revelation for me. It doesn't have a display, which was actually something that I struggled with a bit on the Oxy One. I couldn't really read what was on there. My eyes are not what they used to be, and the T1 doesn't have a display, and everything is very haptic and based off on certain rotaries that have 2 functions. And making chords and melodies with it is really interesting. It's kind of like it's based on mathematic principles and very, very intuitive to use, and it's opened up whole different kind of melodic landscapes for me, which has just been hugely fun. So right now it's triggering like a little basic pattern on the Prophet 6, as you can see. Tweaking the low cut or low pass filter on it a bit. And I'm actually using a sound set that I bought recently from Miles Away. He has really cool sound sets on his store, and you know, he shows stuff in his YouTube. Really good sounds. Always happy to promote a fellow independent musician and YouTuber. It's not that I only use my own stuff, I use whatever works. I think I was just trying to get both things into the frame so you can kind of see the process. If I had to go away to an island, the 2 sequencers I would take with me is the Torso and the Beatstep Pro. They're super amazing, both of them. One for drums and basses, one for melodies and stuff. You can do drums with the torso also, but those are the two applications I like to use them in. The delay you're hearing on the Prophet is one of the delays that's just fixed on one of the channels that I'm tracking into in Ableton. I think it's probably like my melody track. It just has some delay on it just to keep things interesting. And if I want a different delay, I'll track that sound onto some different channel. There you can see above now I'm tracking this sound into Ableton. So let's have a listen. Opening filter and release a bit to start to create more of a soundscape. And this is what I love about the torso. The T1. It's so easy to create like vibes and atmospheres because it's transposing notes based on a scale. It has like, I think 8 or something different kinds of scales in it, major, minor, chromatic, all that. There's a couple of other interesting ones. And yeah, you just twist some knobs around and you get a whole vibe going super easily, super intuitively. Yeah, listening to this now here, doing the voiceover, I can hear like a dozen melodies in my head and chords that could go well over this. So what I'm recording now I would consider the harmonic opener of the track. It sets the vibe, it sets the mood that you can work around. And that was a little mistake, you know, I went one note too far down, but I like it. It's cool, it's fun, it's like alive. And then I went back to the same note, root note, an octave lower. Cool, I totally just go with that. It's now like a B part. So as you can tell, I'm kind of tracking the core idea of the track now in real time and just making a super long take that I would just play through the track and then see how it lines up. Very similar to what I did with that bass line. And often really nice, happy accidents happen this way. Because sometimes these things just coincide that, you know, you have this really nice change in the bass and the melody kind of goes in the opposite direction, or both open their releases at the same time. And for me, like, that's a bit where the magic happens. I love it when that happens. So I'm out of record now and have gone to playing this little melody, adding a bit of reverbs on the super channel effects just to get a feeling for what this would sound like in a break. And yeah, maybe to point out that, you know, the reason for me why all this can be so fluid is because I'm working in a template where a lot of the levels are set, a lot of the typical effects that you need are available. I don't spend any time anymore looking for a reverb, looking for a delay, loading it, tweaking it, you know, setting the levels. remembering which was the button that I wanted to map to it. Like, I've done that stuff for so many years, I basically didn't want to do it anymore, which is why I built this template. And I've been sharing this with other musicians as a fast way to produce, and the resonance on it has been incredible. It actually allowed me to leave my corporate day job a couple of years ago. So if you want to learn how to produce fluid like this and just follow your ideas and intuition and have a lot of fun in the studio, yeah, this is what I found through collaborations, experimentation, and it's what we offer over on rapidflow.shop. What you're listening to now is the toms and kick drum from a really weird, crazy machine called the Raw 808, Raw 888. 8 Raw 8, that's it, there you go. It's just, I love the way these toms sound. This is a fully analog, basically it's the circuits, it's the guts of an 808, built by hand discreetly by this wonderful French gentleman that makes these machines. It's reasonably affordable for, you know, getting the 808 sound. I mean, it's not cheap, but, you know, it's a hell of a lot less than an 808. It doesn't have a sequencer, but, you know, you can trigger it with something. And yeah, the quality of the sounds in it are just, for me, next level. It's such a wonderful, warm tone for toms and kick drums. That's mostly what I use it for. And because I know that I tweaked the Beatstep Pro to really be tight now for the bass line, I'm not going to touch that multi-clock anymore, I hope. Because normally I wouldn't do that anymore, because otherwise the groove of the toms would be in a different pocket than the bass, right? Unless stuff goes out of sync somehow. So yeah, right now I'm setting the pitch of, I'm actually using the kick drum as a tom. The 8 Raw 8 has a really nice modification that you can tune the kick drum and adjust the length. Yeah, let's have a listen. It's such a great machine. So yeah, that's something that felt good for me. So let's track this. So yeah, I mean, you know, this video is real time. You know, I could maybe have made some edits here and there to, I guess, make this faster. But yeah, like, there's so much content on YouTube that's all about fast cuts and everything has to be super fast and you're gonna, you know, get some takeaway within 5 minutes. There's never any cables on the desks, there's a couple of plants, and that's just not what I do. So if you want to see someone making music in real time and be, you know, be in the studio, so virtually kind of with me during the process, and you don't mind if there's a couple of cables and dust and stuff lying around and not everything is perfectly organized, then you have come to the right place. If you want to watch stuff that looks super slick and is edited down to precision, then yeah, probably my channel is not going to be for you. But yeah, I think there's value in just seeing the process, and sometimes there's parts that are a little bit boring also for me when I'm doing it, but those are the bits you have to get through, I think, as a musician, to then dig into the stuff that then becomes exciting again. Like I remember I tried to do stuff here now, for example, with these high toms. I like them when I hear them in other people's tracks. Like I think Jan Blomqvist does an amazing job using those high toms and making a really funky, groovy pattern. For some reason, when I try, I just can't really be happy with it. So I know I'm going to try some stuff here with those high toms. Let's have a listen. Yeah, the cool thing with the Beatstep Pro also, it's very easy to set up a pattern to be 32 steps instead of 16 steps. And it's super easy to mute certain tom hits. You just select the note below and then you see the hits above. So yeah, for me it's like an unrivaled workflow for a small little sequencer. And it's yeah, like I think Ben Jordan also spoke about it a couple of, I don't know, I saw a video of his recently where he was also like, this thing is just next level. Yeah, I have no affiliation with Arturia, but I can so recommend this thing. I've been close to buying a second many times just to have it hard routed to certain devices. But yeah, so far doing the one and just thinking a little bit about the MIDI routing is totally possible. So yeah, that first tab is kick, then there's 3 toms above it. I'm like trying to find a counter rhythm to what's happening with the bass and everything on the toms, something maybe a little bit syncopated. That was the pattern, very basic, just using the kick in the lowest tom. I like these kinds of super simple tom patterns. I hope I don't mess with this now because I really like this basic pattern. Don't record, don't add more toms. Oh no, here we go. You see there I've selected that high tom, and it's very easy to just select a different one. I know that the 8x8 doesn't have velocity as far as I remember, so you just pick a different one and then that's it. Okay, so that high tom is actually quite nice up there. As you can see in Ableton, I'm tracking it now. And yeah, the analyzer in the top right is the Flux Analyser. And I have it set up in such a way that I always can keep an eye on, basically whenever the meters in the lower right quadrant start to turn red, I know that I've tracked in something into my template too loud. Because there is limiters all over the place, but it can still go in the red. And kind of if you're just kissing the red lines on that Spotify loud metering, then I know that everything will sound really great afterwards. So it's super helpful for me to just, you know, if I get carried away with something, that I don't annihilate my levels. And it's very helpful also to check, for example, if I have too much low end on the toms, or, you know, if the bass has too much low end, it's fighting against the kick. I use that to check a lot of those kinds of things. So yeah, I'd made a big mistake there and routed some kind of a feedback loop, which was horribly loud. So I made an edit here. I cut out a second or two so I'd spare your ears. yeah, so we're tracking in now the toms, and I'm going to show you a little trick that I do, which is, you see those, well, they're kind of hard to see. Let's see if I can show it to you better. Yeah, there you go. You see what I'm rotating now? Those are low-cut filters on the LouderThanLiftoff Chop Shop, which are some of the most amazing, handy little devices I've ever come across. You can basically remove low-end, high-end, shift frequency spectrum of anything you're processing with just a couple of it's like super easy. It's like a super fast EQ that helps you to just track in the frequency content that you want. So right now I'm doing a resonant bump on the tom, but I am chopping away ultra low frequencies because I don't want the tom to fight with the kick and the bass line all the time. You can probably tell the tom's a little bit thinner now, a little bit more controlled. That Audioscape AS78 above it, where you see the VU needles dancing, that's inserted across the master, because that thing just adds vibe and mojo like nobody's business. I mean, all these things are super nerdy, like the last 10-15%. Most people probably wouldn't notice too much if they're not musicians or engineers, that what it does, but I love the vibe that and the master bus processor from Neve add. And even though it made the timing for this whole recording session really complex to play stuff in, I wanted to just put it on the output so you could have a listen also to what I listen to in the studio. So I would say 80% of the heavy lifting is done in the mastering chain of the template. I'm using Daniel Zitterberg's mid-side mastering chain of Earthbound Mastering, which is also something we offer on the store. And then, yeah, like the last 20% are these wonderful analog devices processing the sound, running to it through Orpheus converters. That's just a total luxury to get a really warm, wide, smooth sound going, even while you're producing. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't have qualms about bouncing this and using it as a master. So there's my toms, just checking levels. And as you can tell, they're fat, but they're not overbearing on the low end. So here we go. I think this is the part where I decided it was time to bring in the Moog Muse. A bit of a funny story, like the Moog Muse, when it came out, you know, I saw all the Synthfluencer videos drop, and I was like, ah, yeah, super nice. I'm sure it's going to cost like $6,000-7,000 euros. And then I went to the Thomann site, and it was actually less than half that for me as a business. I don't pay the value-added tax and blah blah blah. And I saw it was in stock, and I was like, oh no. And I just sold actually a bunch of audio gear from my studio that I hadn't been using in the weeks previous. So I was like, well, okay, thinking I may send it back if it's not totally amazing. I just wanted to check it out, and my god, it's just so good. It's such a wonderful synth. Like, I'm so happy that I nabbed it and got one of the first batch. It sounds incredible. It's an absolute joy to use. It has such varied sounds. So yeah, that I would say is kind of like, yeah, one of the new go-to synths that I use here for chords, stabby, arpeggio stuff. I have to dive deeper into it because it can do so much, but really cool instrument. And I can't believe Moog built it at that price point, because it feels absolutely premium. Nothing about it feels like Moog cut any corners. So there we go. There's the Moog coming into the, what is it, harmonics channel that I have set up. As you can tell, it also has some delay. So at this point, still very loud. Not sure if the delay is from the template or from the Moog. So yeah, just checking levels here, making sure the routing is correct. And as you can tell, I'm just trying to keep the track going, the vibe. I rarely hit stop unless something is broken or I need to concentrate. And this is something that I saw on a video from really great musician. I'm going to dig out his name now. My memory is bad sometimes. So yeah, to always just keep the vibe going means you end up producing faster also, because you don't stop yourself from the flow. So let's have a listen to the Moog Muse. So yeah, using the Muse here now for kind of a chordy sound. And the musician that I picked this up of never stopping the DAW when you're writing is Tom Hades, who has various really nice masterclasses online. Yeah, so thank you, Tom, for that tip. It's a great tip. And something I realized when I was recording in this Moog Muse part, the chords I ended up using were chords that I learned using the Torso T1. They're not intervals that I normally used to go for, but once I somehow tweaked them using the Torso, they stuck in my head and I was like, ooh, I really like this. So if you happen to catch my kind of condensed studio live streams where I did 5 days in the studio non-stop, I was using the Torso a lot on that, and a lot of the chords that came up were different from stuff that I'd done before, and they stuck in my head. So yeah, let's see the chords that I've come up with. I love the APC Mark II for this, that it has a dedicated metronome knob. So I made some mistakes there, otherwise I probably would have just done this in audio, but I realized, yeah, this was going to be too tricky to do just as audio, which is my preferred way of working. So in this case, I said, okay, I'm going to have to bite the bullet and do it in MIDI. And stuff like this I prefer to do without the kick. It helps me focus better on the timing. The beginning was good. I think the end was a bit out of time. Let's see. It's actually not even a chord, it's just an interval that I'm using. But yeah, I guess I felt that I could do better, and that was just going to be way too much work to fix. Okay, let's have a look at that. And as you can see, unfortunately, just the way it is, doesn't really matter. The MIDI timing, because of all the latency introduced by all those outboard devices, is massive and all these notes are all over the place. What I know is that they're reasonably in sync with themselves. So what I'm doing now is I've grabbed all the notes, put the velocity on maximum and lowered it, so now they all have the same velocity. The Moog Muse is obviously velocity sensitive, and this would be a case where I would stop the DAW, otherwise it would do my head in. Yeah, if it was always playing. I've quantized everything now, so within itself it's still a correct sequence, but it's all over the place against the metronome because there's like 25 milliseconds latency on my output. So I'm now going to look where I played it in against the metronome and just shift all the notes as one block to that position. At the top you can actually see the key commands that I'm using. It's a nice little app that I installed recently. So I think I set my grid to triplets. And I'm just looking for where these notes feel right against the metronome and the downbeat. So something I do here now is I'm going to move the place where the notes change, how do you call it, where they change, notes, where they go up or down a bit. I'm going to change the timing of some of these so that it repeats that little skip at the end of this sequence. So I wanted to also come in there a little bit earlier. I'm going to edit this part out because it's a bit boring. It's just moving MIDI notes around till they all sound the same. So hang on a second, bear with me. I'm just going to jump forward a bit to not make this video unnecessarily long. So 3 minutes or so of video of MIDI editing later, and this is what I wanted. So you hear how when the pattern kind of recycles, the first note is kind of on the same feeling as the first time. So it's like a little rhythmic skip that I like. I've done a save now of the project, which is a good thing to do. My system's pretty stable, as you can tell, because I'm not feeling compelled to save all the time. I'm running a MacBook Pro M1 Max, 64 gigs of RAM, and it's a beast. It's unbelievable what that computer can do all at the same time. It struggles a bit when I'm capturing all these 4K video streams plus running a fully loaded live set. You know, this above the track I'm working on now, there's like a dozen tracks that I've been working on before that are part of my live set. I always just work into the live set so the new stuff I make is ready to be used. But yeah, that computer is crazy. It's insane how well it performs. So I'm checking now which channel I'm going to record this sound onto, because they all sound a bit different. They all have a little bit of different reverb and delay, the melodic elements. Like, you know, you see I have a harmonic, melodic, hook, pad, Atmo. So depending on what I just think sounds coolest, I'll track into that. And it looks like here I'm going for a very dry sound, seems like. Let's have a look. That sounds pretty nice. Looks like there's a Valhalla delay on there. Every track has a console one that I mostly just use to cut high frequencies. Sometimes I'll use the shaper on it a bit or a little bit of the EQ. More than anything, it's just like a high frequency cut that I'll show you when I sequence this track in a little bit. So those notes feel pretty on the money. I mean, as you saw, they're nowhere really on the grid that makes sense, but I'm just listening, I'm just checking where the timing is in relation to, obviously, the downbeat and the rest of the music. All right, the fist is there, looks like I'm happy. Let's have a listen. Okay, so we're recording now. I'm just recording it first pass always a little bit just as I set it up, because sometimes I tweak it and then break it, so I want to capture at the very least what I made the sequence with. And now I will tweak it. Has a very unique sound somehow, the Moog Muse. Has a certain character in the mids, low mids, that I haven't heard before, and that I think is really an enrichment, yeah, to the sounds that I use. Moog filters, of course, unrivaled. This is a low cut filter. There seems to be a little skip on one of those MIDI notes, but hey, c'est la vie. Life isn't perfect. And yeah, big shout out to Lisa Belladonna and a gentleman that I only know as Max, who were, amongst many people, instrumental in designing the Moog Muse. It's such a wonderful instrument that I'm sure will become a modern classic. The work done on making this into something that's polyphonically playable while keeping the Moog sound, while not becoming a massive mess, and the whole user interface, everything about it just feels right. Really wonderful instrument that you've created there, so thank you. What I'm doing here is a really nice little technique that at the beginning of a recording there's a little yellow dot, and if you hit, I think it's Option or Command, you can click it and shift the whole recording in time. So what I'm doing now is, in essence, affecting the groove of this recording. That feels better. Really nice little trick that you can do if your MIDI wasn't bang on, or if the latencies were weird, to fix a recording that wasn't quite on the money. This is something that I like to do a lot, is to switch it to Beats Mode 16th. I'm sure you know this trick where you can kind of make it like a gated 16th envelope follower type sound. So like for some sounds it's really cool, maybe when the track is a little bit more relaxed. And at some points I would open it and use the full long sound. but right now I'm digging it for this. And there's the counter melody to that we recorded first on the Prophet 6. And if you're looking at the clock and wondering how the hell is he going to sequence this in 10 minutes, we may go a little bit over, but it's not going to take me longer than it takes me to play the track to get a rough first sequence of this. So I'm gonna show you that in a minute, which in essence is me doing the sequence in real time using controllers and just following my instincts on where the track wants to go. I've added some eventide automation, some send to a reverb on that first melody we recorded, so that in my live set, when I get to this track, that will go up and be set on that sequence. And if you look on the bottom there was just a little pedal that I saw Mike Dean use on one of his tracks, which is called the Digitech Talker. It's like a vocoder and talkbox that a lot of people use, amongst them, yeah, Mike Dean. I think Daft Punk has used it, I'm pretty sure. And I was able to pick one up in good condition from Germany used, because I've always wanted to do stuff with vocals somehow, and honestly, like, I can't sing my vocals. I mean, I can hit a note, but this just makes it a lot easier. I can't really sing. I don't know. I don't think so. At least, yeah, no, not to a level that I would be happy with. But processed like this as a talkbox and hitting the notes on a synthesizer, that's a different story. So that's what we're doing here now. That Poly D, whatever it's called from Behringer, is going through the talkbox and the microphone as well. And I'm using this to kind of do like a vocoder sound, basically. Cool, so yeah, I tracked in some of this vocoder stuff in the edit that I made previously. And what I love about this, and there you can see the stuff I recorded. What I love about this is it fills out the mid-spectrum of a track in a way that I usually find very difficult to do. Like, most of my sounds are low mids and extreme highs, but I had not really found something that I could fill out the middle part of the spectrum. So as you can see on my frequency plot on the analyzer, it's really filled and flat, kind of dropping down a bit, which is exactly usually what you're looking for. So yeah, this tool, this sound, there you can see that little pedal right in front of the Electron Octa track. Just really rounds out the sounds that I can get to complete a track and to add sort of all the harmonic or frequency content also that I feel would be necessary. And it's hugely fun to do stuff that somehow has the human voice in it. I'm sure at some point I'll come up with some lyrics and do a track more properly, but I'm also still learning to use this talker box. But yeah, I love how it sounds. It's such a weird, somehow human, somehow alien sound. So with that now, I would say we have enough to do a first rough sketch of what this track could be as a sequence. So what I'm doing now is I'm copying all the MIDI clips that are needed to play back this track as is down to one row. I could have just done capture scene, but I don't know. I didn't think about it that moment. And I'm looking for a starting point for this track, and let's see if we're gonna get this all in under an hour. At this point, as I'm doing this voiceover, I'm not entirely sure how long this video is yet. But yeah, I'm looking for the stuff that I'm gonna use for the track. I've moved over the highlight box of the APC40 so I can see which tracks have clips in them. And just checking, that was, I think, the first recording of the Moog clip, which wasn't needed for anything. I've just erased it. So there is my basic building blocks. Drums with the toms, hi-hats, of course, kick, bass line, one high melody, one lower melody from the Moog Muse, the vocoder sound, and that is what I would use to come up with the initial track idea for this. And I'm sure at a later point more stuff would come in, you know, risers, effects, what they call ear candy. But I hope the idea of this as a track is strong enough that if you were to play it through for, I don't know, 4, 5, 6, 7 minutes, it's enough to make a track that feels like it has enough content. Because of course we can do a lot with those long takes and with filtering, which was what I'm doing now. Those 8 macro knobs on the APC are actually routed to high cuts on all the melodic elements that I just recorded. That's the way my live set is set up. So I can take down the first 8 tracks on my set, kick, bass, snare, and like 5 melodic things. I can really alter the way they sound by really removing all the highs, which combined with the super channel effects is massively powerful. It's a really easy way to be able to bring your track energy up and down. Yeah, and like that was a really nice happy accident. I really liked how those two parts were playing together. So here we go. Using this as a starting point for the track sequence. And what I'm turning now are the macro effects from the super channel that affect every sound. My left hand is on the high cut filter. And now you can tell I'm starting to bring in the melodic elements using, again, high cut filters on console 1. So yeah, on the floor I have a foot switch with which I can switch out all the live performance effects. And everything else is just, yeah, real-time moving and bringing in of channels using faders on the desk. And because all the faders are always tweaking the same kind of sound on my template, I know exactly where my hi-hats are, or my toms, or my kick drum, you know, I never have to think about this stuff. And that's the beauty of having a standardized workflow. there comes that vocal hook. Or hook, you know, that vocoder. And as you could tell, this part of making the original sequence for me is like a super intuitive, fun process. Sometimes I'll do it a couple of times. But I love the fact that you get track sequences that are fully driven by a feeling rather than whatever makes sense on the screen. Like, I have no idea what I'm recording on the arrange view. Doesn't matter really, as long as the track feels good. And sure, you know, some bits are not perfect, like that drop, you know, I'll need to work on the automation, but I love where I put it and the vibe of it. Just the reverb was too loud, which is a super easy fix. And the more you do this, the easier it gets, and it's just so much more fun than doing stuff with blocks on a screen. I used to do that, of course, also for many years. But once I learned how to do this workflow from other really great professional musicians that I did masterclasses with, among them Sebastian Müllert and Frank Wiedemann, yeah, everything changed. And actually those classes were instrumental in me developing the Rapid Flow template. So this is now the outro of this track, and the cool thing is that doing all this stuff was very fluid, very fun, very quick. There was no time spent like on minutiae inside, you know, plugins and stuff. It was all about the musical idea and capturing that quickly. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video and the whole workflow of this. I hope to see you on the next video. Subscribe and all that stuff, and I hope you have a great time in the studio. Take it easy. Bye-bye.